I've found that in the realm of the universal experience or spirit, there's really no wrong path. It's like lessons in what you'll learn if you turn right versus lessons in what you'll learn if you turn left. And there's always a investment in the universe to navigate you back to your highest good, even if you make a detour.
Jenni, welcome to the Earn Your Happy podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
I am so delighted to be here, Lori. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I think it's your absolute favorite
Definitely
topic.
my favorite topic.
All we have to do is look at your shirt today for like a cue of what we're going to chat about.
Perfect.
What is this shirt? I love it, first of all.
The constellations.
Okay, the constellations. Mm-hmm. We've got like full astrology over here.
Yes.
If I get distracted.
The cosmos.
Yes, that's what's happening. Okay, so we are going to talk today all about how intuition is your superpower in business.
Absolutely, yes.
And in life and in relationships.
And yes, just the blanket superpower for everything.
Yes. Okay, so I think the thing that I want to know from you is, did you think that you were intuitive when you were younger?
Yes. The earliest memory first, I'm an identical twin.
Okay.
And it's extremely common for identical twins to have an experience with one another. If I don't know if you know a lot of
I've heard that. Mm-hmm.
But I love talking to twins about their even intuitive male twins. I've had discussions with, like, they'll be able to feel each other's physical pain, or they'll live in completely different areas of the country and they'll get a haircut on the same day. Those sort of stories. Okay. So every time, and
I thought you were going to say they would feel when the other one got a haircut, like in their hair.
Yes. Or like, I remember when we were in college one time, this is one of my craziest intuitive experiences with my twin, but I was walking through the college campus and all of a sudden this soundtrack started to play in my head. And I came home and I was like, did you watch Gladiator at around 3 p.m. today? Because suddenly, you know, the Gladiator soundtrack that's so iconic. It was just like reverberant in my head as I'm walking through to class. And my sister was like, yes, I watched Gladiator at 3 p.m. and I could hear it. So I'm clairaudient.
Yeah.
But that was one element of knowing when I was younger. And the other piece that probably a lot of people don't grow up with is I grew up in a very intuitive family where my mother's bloodline is Native American and they are all psychic intuitives. So from a really young age that was encouraged. And my grandmother, I remember around age 11, my great grandmother had passed and I had dreamt about communicating with her on the other side, and I was 11 years old. And so my grandmother was like, oh yes, all the women in this bloodline have a gift and we can send each other mind messages so you can communicate with us. This is before cell phones.
Yeah.
So when we were younger, it was really common for me to, send my mom a message like, I need a new toothbrush. I'm out of toothpaste.
So you were like working on this and you didn't even realize it because someone told you.
It was very natural. The first memory that I have of using it as a child was I had lost something that I couldn't find. And I asked my angels where it was and I heard where to look. And then my mom said, oh, how did you find that? And I said, well, I asked my angels and they told me where it was. And she said like, oh, very good. It wasn't like, okay,
like we're gonna work on getting
sit down
this,
and tell me more about who did you talk to?
Yeah, exactly.
That was just really common, and it was always part of the conversation. And I think having a really intuitive mother, my mom is claircognizant, so that's where you don't get an image or since I hear things behind, like almost like a thought or a voice in my head, I can hear or perceive an answer. My mom can't put her finger on how she knows, but she knows. And it's to the degree of if you play board games with her, like Trivial Pursuit or Cranium, where there's a question and there's an answer written down. If you're looking at it, she'll tell you what you're looking at. And she would do that at these like family game nights to the tune of like, I remember one of her best friend's husband was like, you have to be cheating. You memorized this card deck. And she was like, you honestly think that I memorized the entire card deck of Trivial Pursuit? I have twins who are young children. When would I have time to do that? But she's claircognizant, so she just knows, And so it was a really common experience for me as a kid, Like,
do you know if her mom nurtured that too?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
that
like way back.
Studying our family's history, when you're Native American, it is hard to trace all the way back because sometimes there's not birth certificates or records, but every living relative that's still part of that Native American bloodline has all said the same thing, that we come from this historic psychic Native American bloodline, and that everyone in that line has this gift.
Wow. So you've always known, that's always been normal to you. That's always something that's been nurtured. So are we all psychic, do you think? Are all of us?
I deeply believe yes. I do think that it is very similar to the way that people have heightened abilities in the 3D as well. Like if you've ever met a chef, they have this incredible ability to taste something and then tell you the ingredients that are in something.
Yeah.
Or like if you meet a sommelier and they can take a sip of wine and they can tell you all the notes and the flavors, and they've trained in that. Right. So like, and I meet people all the time. They're like, oh, I used to not be into wine, but then I started studying in wine, and now I can discern all of the flavors and the grapes and where it was grown, and the dirt and the little accents and the nuances. And so I think it's a lot like that.
Yeah.
You can train in deciphering the nuances, and some people come in with a natural heightened ability or openness or awareness. And then others, I think, are either naturally more muted and or they spend more time in our modern society. I really believe that the way that our society now is built, it's designed to mute intuition. There's music playing everywhere that we go. We're overstimulated. I really believe that electromagnetic fields interfere a lot with your intuitive capacity, and there's very little silence, very little stillness now. And so people aren't exposed to that as a method of communication. And so it may just be what I call sleeping intuition. It's just asleep, and you need to learn how to wake it up.
That's such a cool analogy about even like the wine notes, because it's so funny. If you ever drink wine and they're like, oh, there's tobacco and this is like jam. And I'm like, what wine are you tasting? This has a hint
of cherry. And it's like, it does it?
Are we sure?
Yeah.
But then also, you go into, maybe you've experienced this with different people or in different relationships where you're in a room and you guys kind of like give your notes after a party or something. And you're like, okay, I felt this, and did this person feel off, or that felt weird, or I picked up on this over there. And they're like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, were we at the same party?
Yes.
This is like so weird, or whatever was going on. Okay. So tell me about the different types of how people receive intuition.
Okay. So the easiest way to think of it is your normal five senses of how you're perceiving and receiving information in the 3D world can also be applied into the metaphysical world, the unseen world, or let's call it the psychic world. So,
okay, so 3D world, for people who don't understand that language, that's like
touch
here
it.
And now, what you can
experience it in your body, touch through your senses.
Okay.
So the most popular version, I think, of psychic sensing would be psychic sight, which is called clairvoyance.
Okay.
So that's on a small level. It might be the ability to see numbers repeating on a clock. A lot of people have that experience of every time I look at a clock, I see 1111, totally. I see 444. It could be seeing totem animals in the 3D. Like, I don't know what it is, but bluebirds just tend to follow me around. That's a version of psychic sight.
Yeah.
But then when you get into the more heightened skill level, into the Harry Potter Hogwarts realm of psychic sensing, then that would include...
Do we get a wand? Yeah. Can I get a wand?
Sure.
Okay.
That might include being able to see energy in the psychic dimension. So being able to view auric fields, or having really prophetic dreams where I know people that have dreamt about meeting people in the future. James and I actually have two friends' wives who dreamt that they met me 2 years before they met me.
Wow.
And then when they met me, they went, oh my gosh, that's who I saw in my dream 2 years ago.
Wow.
So that's a version of psychic sight. Another would be psychic hearing. My primary modality is clairaudient. And I experience that as the tricky thing with clairaudience is learning to distinguish between what is your own anxiety talking to you, or what's the voice in your head where I'm talking to myself versus receiving guidance from somewhere else. And as I did that, I just gestured like behind my left ear. I've found, and there's a lot of documented examples of this, that intuitive guidance often comes through the left ear. In fact, a lot of people who are clairaudient will experience ear aches in their left ear or tinnitus in the left ear. Like they'll hear just like not a constant tinnitus, but like a little ringing that kind of amplifies and then dissipates. And that's a cue of psychic hearing. It could be that you hear the same song over and over, or something that my partner James experiences all the time is, you're the third person to say that to me. I can't believe you just recommended that book to me. 3 people recommended that book to me last week. That's an example of clairaudience. So you can see how it starts in the third dimension of like what I'm physically hearing, like 3 people that I can see and touch and experience in my life said that to me. Yeah. And then in the psychic dimension, as you get into a more heightened experience of it, would be like, I heard the guidance in my left ear that I should read this book, something like that. And then there's clairsentient, which is the ability to feel. I find that a lot of teachers and actually a lot of people that are mentors in the digital space are very clairsentient. If you're a very empathetic person, if it's easy for you to experience emotions for other people, that can be a level of psychic sensing where, like, if you're the person at the party where you notice, did you think that person felt off to you? I just got chills as I said that. Sometimes that can be the ability to tune in to someone else's experience in their own body. And that's a level of being able to perceive something that's beyond yourself. People who get like goosebumps when something is true. Yes. Or people who use the phrase, I just had a gut feeling. I felt that in my gut. That's an example of psychic sensing. Clairsentient. And then there's claircognizant, which is my mom. I don't know how I know, but I know,
We don't play board games with them.
No. Well,
card games.
Unless you
want to lose. Yeah.
You can put them on your team.
We got to teach her how to gamble.
Very strategic. Actually.
Let's take her to Vegas.
You know what? James has tried that, and I felt it was
James has tried that.
I felt it was an improper use of my gifts, but I do remember we were in Las Vegas one time, and we were at the craps table, and I didn't even know how to play. They were asking me to play, and so I'm just telling them what I'm getting, and I think we won $200 or something, and I was like, no, we have to leave. I can't use my gifts in this way.
There are a couple people who are going to train themselves now and go to Vegas. Well, look, it's not up to us to judge them.
Use only the light side of the force.
Use it for the good. Do not use it for the dark. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about that. I just want to dive in a little bit deeper. So if somebody really recognized themselves, like for me, I feel like I could pay attention more to different things, meaning I see a lot of the numbers, like the kind of like, you had talked about animals. Yeah. I feel like different things follow me around all the time. Also, I feel like there's things that I could tune into more, or gifts that I could tune into more. How can each person, or maybe you want to walk through each of them, or just how can we kind of tune in a little bit more to those particular gifts, or start noticing which ones? So
well, you already said the key,
okay,
which is to really begin noticing and to hone or to pay attention more. Have you ever had a conversation with someone that is a really amazing, deep listener?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Lindsay Schwartz is a great example, because I know she's one of your best friends. When Lindsay is listening, she's so present with you. And have you ever had the experience where you start to talk more because the listening for that person is so present and so wide that all of a sudden you find yourself like, wow, I was communicating a lot more freely and a lot more than I normally would.
I tend to always text her and I'm like, I word vomited all over you.
But even without intending to, it's just like, because the listening is there. So that's what I encourage people to do, is if you do want to hone your intuition, you look at it as the universe is having this conversation with you all the time. But if you're distracted and busy, just like if you were talking to a human being, you might just, if all of a sudden in our conversation, I just got out my laptop, didn't say anything, you're continuing to talk, and I just get out my laptop and I start typing, your instinct would probably be to say, Jen, should I pause? Or do you need to focus on
like
something
cut
else
the energy
right now?
off.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you think about that, like that we're always in this dialogue and this discourse with the universe, and our attention is telling the universe how much to communicate with us. So if it goes radio silent, consider that you've turned off your listening. And that if you start to pay attention to it and say, thank you for it. And oh my gosh, thank you so much for showing me that sign. What else do you have to say? And then you're watching for it. Then you'll probably begin to notice that there's something talking to you all the time. I like to think of intuition, honestly, like the Wi-Fi of the universe, that in the 1900s, having the concept of I could type a question into a machine and then any information that I wanted would appear.
Yeah.
That's like witchcraft back in the 1900s.
Yes.
Because they're like, where would it come from? How would you get it? Where would it? And to us, we're like, because of the internet. But I can't see and touch the internet. It's just out there. And so the same with intuition. If you know the right questions to ask, and open-ended questions are more interesting than a yes, no. A lot of people want to get like, what's the right, what's the wrong? And I've found that in the realm of the universal experience or spirit, there's really no wrong path. It's like lessons in what you'll learn if you turn right versus lessons in what you'll learn if you turn left. And there's always a investment in the universe to navigate you back to your highest good, even if you make a detour. So I really believe that not paying attention to our intuition is the best way to figure out what your intuition was telling you. Like, have you ever had an experience where you made a decision and you had an experience before you made that decision, and then it turned out to either not be in your best interest, or later you found out maybe that could be labeled a mistake or a misstep, and then you look back and you say, I knew better. I had a gut feeling. Something told me not to do that. You know what? Right before that happened, this sign occurred and I should have known. Can you think of something like that?
I mean, the people that I used to hang out with.
Yeah.
I for sure was like, these are not good people.
How were you
should've-
experiencing that?
Trying to think. My solar plexus
Okay. Yeah.
would talk to me all, meaning like I would just feel it like something is off. It doesn't feel good. My solar plexus would always felt like a big uncomfortable question mark.
And have you ever had an experience of something that you absolutely knew was right?
Yes.
Was it in the solar plexus?
I'm trying to think. I usually get the feeling for right for me is actually so full body. If it almost feels like I could levitate. That it's like a very lifted, energized feeling, like full energy, like more energy than I could muster up even if I tried. Like that's when it's a yes.
Yeah.
For me.
Okay, good. So then if you were to sit with that, and if I was coaching you as like, we're going to make a little tailored Lori meditation for how to awaken your intuition, then what I'd have you do is sit with this experience where I knew this was not the right environment for me. This was not the right group of friends for me to be with. Where did I feel that in my body as a sensation? I felt it in my solar plexus. Was anything else happening? Did you hear anything? Did you see anything? And sight might even be like a color or a word, or it could be a sound.
I think it's almost like I could flash forward to like, this isn't going to end well. Like I felt like I could see how things would end.
Yeah. And did you see yourself feeling an emotion, or did you see them doing something?
You're bringing me way back to like 20 years ago, which is so great. Let me think what I would see. This is so good. You guys are on a live coaching session right now. Let's see. Oh, I would just see things like not honestly, like not going well. Sometimes it would be like worst case scenario.
Yes.
And this is so crazy.
So, okay, this is what's so interesting about neurolinguistics and psychic ability.
Yeah.
Is in neurolinguistics, you start to look at how do humans receive information into the brain.
Yeah.
And when you start training in this as a coach, you start learning how to elicit, well, how did you get that information? And usually it's coming in the form of a picture, a sound, or a feeling.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people aren't really present to the way that they pull in information. But at first what you were present to was I felt it in my gut.
Yeah.
But then as you start to walk yourself back and put yourself in that place, you're like, wait a minute, there was a picture.
I do see pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's almost like intuition can be like a television that you left on in the background and you completely forget that it's on. But when you get really silent and quiet and you look, then you realize, wait a minute, the TV is on. Like if you ever gone to bed at night and when you're finally in bed and you're about to go to sleep and you go, oh, I left the light on.
Yes.
You have to go. That's kind of like intuition for some people. It's like it's operating in the background, but they don't notice it until they get still enough to really go and ask. So if we look at yours as the most dominant feeling is this solar plexus feeling, which is harder to ignore. Mm-hmm. But if I'm quiet enough, I can also see I was being shown images.
Okay, so how do we know when that is fear of like, you know, let's say I'm in a situation with the friends and I'm thinking back to like, I'm just playing worst case scenario because we're obviously maybe doing something that is a little sketchy or whatever. And I'm just like thinking of the worst things that could happen and I'm getting these feelings. Is it because I'm afraid and I'm playing it to the end and I'm creating that for myself? Mm-hmm. How do I tell the difference between, is this intuitive? Because there were many nights nothing happened.
Right.
But ultimately when I look back, I mean, like really terrible things happened to even these people. Mm-hmm. Most of them are not with us anymore, which is really crazy to say.
Yeah.
Crazy to say. So how do I know if that was
you said that.
Really crazy? They might be in this room. Just kidding. Mm-hmm. Not to freak you out.
They're
just kidding.
Here.
How would you know, like tell the difference between, oh, this is just fear again or
Well, that's probably the most common question that I get from people of like, especially when they're starting to tune into clairaudience, because when we talk to everyone talks to themselves in their head. And if you're thinking like what voice and what do you mean? What voice in my head? That voice in your head that just asked that question. And so it's like you have to experiment with your own self. One, it's a personal journey. So that I can't give the recipe formula for every single person of like what is the distinct difference between your own personal guidance in your head and receiving your angelic or your spirit guidance. But what's really common is if we look at the experiences where you're certain you had anxiety and you did it anyway. So can you think of an experience where you were like really, really nervous?
Yes. I mean, before I speak on stage, it's getting better, but still after years, I'm very nervous.
Okay.
And then I go,
So if you take yourself back to like the last time that you felt like you were very nervous and you were certain that both were present and something good happened. So it was like both were present. I was very anxious and there was something that was pulling me towards my highest good.
Yeah.
So then if we start to look at what part of you knew that you were going into something that was good for you?
Oh, this is so good today. Let's see. What part of me knew? There was a part of me that knew that the anxiety feeling was growth. It wasn't fear. So I like really sat with it and was like, okay, why is this here? Because I've now tended to ask it. I'm like, why are you here? What are you trying to teach me?
Yes.
And it wasn't to be afraid because I ultimately ran down like, what am I afraid of?
Yes.
And stupid stuff. It was like, oh, passing out on stage. Oh, people not like, and I could deal with all those. I'm like, I can deal with that. I can deal with that. I can deal with that. So it was discerning like the anxiety is for growth, like really assessing it was for growth rather than.
And when you say that you knew it was for growth, where did you know that? How did you know that?
I'm like, I want to say in my head because I almost had to talk myself into it. It's like my head knew. I was like, no, this is for growth. But it wasn't, it didn't integrate into my body because my body was just anxious.
So would you say if you had to label it as a vision, a sound, or a feeling, how did you know that this is for my growth?
I get visions, like completing it and knowing that I'm going to be a better person on the other side.
So you can almost see yourself on the other side.
On the other side.
And in that experience, the moment you were invited to speak, what was your first initial response?
The full body energy.
Full body. I just got chills when you said that. So, and that's congruent, right? With when I know I'm in the right situation, I feel this full body energy. And I just got chills all over my body as I said that for you. So that's my confirmation of like, that's true for Lori as she gets a whole body yes.
Yeah.
So you have two clues there. One is from the moment you were asked to do this, you had this intuitive, organic reaction, which was this full body yes, and you said yes. And then your logical mind clicked in. And the thing about the logical brain is anything that hasn't killed you yet which is everything that you've already done, not something you've never done, your logical brain goes, Lori hasn't died yet, doing everything over here. All these things that I've done before hasn't killed me yet, but this other thing is completely unknown. So our survival brain goes, I could die doing that. And that's silly to say logically, but your humanness has this mechanism that wants to keep you alive and safe. Mm-hmm. So that part of you that's developing the anxiety, that's like, Lori, I don't know. Let's not step out on that ledge. We don't know what's over there. I don't know what's going to happen behind that door.
That's not a full body yes by a ledge.
Yes, right. So you have this full body yes of like, yeah, I want to expand and grow, but your smaller self or your ego is really just interested in keeping you safe and alive, which growth isn't necessarily a part of. That sustainability is a part of that. Survival lives in just keep doing the status quo, what I already know. I'm going to make this groove because I know this groove is safe and that's where I'm going to live. Growth involves the unknown and taking a risk.
Yeah.
So the part of you that wants to grow is leaning into this full body, yes. And when the anxiety was happening, where was that occurring for you physically? And where did you feel like it was in a particular area in your mind?
I would say because I feel so much anxiety, it's a lot like I feel it flutters in my heart. I feel in my head, I can't get grounded in my body.
Yeah.
That's mainly what I feel.
I have the same thing. It's like if I get really nervous, I literally go into a yoga sumo squat as low to the ground as possible because my body will start physically shaking.
Yep.
Even if in my head I'm excited, my body will react.
Totally.
With okay, look at what my body's doing. So the first practice is to start to be able to identify those two worlds of like, I can feel that this is for my growth and I am present to anxiety. The more you do things that are like, I'm certain this is a yes for me, and here comes my anxiety. And if you go back and recapitulate, what was my anxiety doing at the time? You can start to befriend it in a way where you really get to know that version of you.
Yeah.
Like I know that anytime I'm going to speak in front of a bigger group than I've ever spoken in front of before, like this last December, we hosted an event that had over 750 people before. And I was like doing the math prior, like what's the biggest theater I've ever spoken at? 500. Wow. Okay. So this is going to be this is going to be like a big
informs body to get more nervous.
Informs body to freak out. Yes. And I know that my particular form of anxiety is when I say yes to the opportunity, I'm like you. I'm like, there's all of a sudden this burst of energy. I get this burst of energy, ideas. I can see it happening. I can see myself on the other side of it. I have a vision of what's going to happen and how it's going to make a difference and what I'm going to share. And then the day before, I go completely numb. And I mean like so apathetic. Why did I say yes to this? I have zero desire to do this.
Do you get tired too? Like
yes.
Insanely tired?
Yes,
You're like I
could
have no
take a nap
energy
at
for
any
this.
time. I have no energy. How am I'm not going to know what to say. My mind goes blank.
Same.
I have nothing to share. Why did I say yes to this? And I remember that the day before our last event, when I had like my biggest section, the morning of, I'm like laying in my salt bath, which is like my pre-ritual before I go speak. And I'm going, oh, and there it is. The complete numbness, the complete apathy, the no desire to do this, the me in my head saying, I'm not going to remember what to say. And I've learned that here comes this character, which is my anxiety. And that's what she always says and does. So then when it arrives, I go, oh yes, I'm very familiar with this. And we're right on schedule. And I am going to trust that initial instinct, that first impulse of which is your intuition, is often what just comes up organically and first, which was like tremendous excitement. So you just keep moving through that anyway. And when you move through it anyway, you cross over that fear barrier into courage, which is like, I'm going to feel all this fear and anxiety. And I'm just going to keep taking a little step forward until I'm out on that stage. And then I start speaking. And now you've tapped into courage and you're fine. But there also will be perhaps other examples where someone has a organic excitement impulse in the beginning, and then you start to feel something else. And then once you do it on the other side, you go, you know what? That something else was telling me not to do it. So then you've got to walk back and go, what was different about that? So I know that my anxiety as I go completely numb, this was different. It actually felt like a pressure in my chest. It felt like something was pushing me physically back. It was not numbness. It was like a definite hand on my chest pushing me backwards, which is what I feel if it's like something's changed. And I think that navigating that and investigating that for yourself so that you can you only learn it in retrospect.
Yeah.
So in that regard, if you want to heighten your intuition, you've got to become really comfortable with allowing yourself the grace to make mistakes.
To make the wrong decisions.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then go, wait a minute, this is information. What can I learn from this? Because next time I'm going to have this whole eco field of biofeedback for how to make a better decision. And to consider that a lot of times we make a decision and then literally information changes. You know, Alan Watts, one of my favorite philosophers, says there's no data analysis on the planet that could give you enough data to always make the right decision because the data is infinite and it's changing. A lot of times we're making decisions off of other human beings. So you make a decision in the moment with another human being and then something changes for them. And so it can change for you. And you have to allow yourself to make those changes, but you also have to really be in the investigation of what is a yes for me? What is a no for me? And what's a yes that has changed to a no for me?
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about this in terms of people, because I think that so many people, you know, the conversation is like, oh, I didn't like how I felt around them, or they gave me a bad feeling, or I was really uncomfortable around them. And so this is something that I'm so guilty of in my life because I can be really protective of myself, especially if anybody has like a past of being hurt by friends or hurt by family. We can tend to like really dig into that person doesn't feel good, or I didn't like the vibes I was getting from them. Yes. And what I found is I'm still navigating this a lot, because a lot of my best friends now are people that I didn't feel good around.
Yeah.
And so it was me navigating, was that my insecurity? Was that my unworthiness? Was that, so can you chat a little bit about how do you navigate kind of going, you know, is this someone I want in my life? Is this someone I should explore more? Are they going to give me more value? Or is this someone I should stay away from? Because I've absolutely had a few people that I was like, you know, I know that everything's a lesson, but I really could have done without this one person.
Yes. I think, well, that's where it's sort of like the marriage of logic and intuition, right? Because you want to, just like you want to have a balance of feminine and masculine energy, you know, and we want to have a balance of night and day. We want to have a balance of light and dark, or, you know, curiosity, but also, you know, calculation. Though there's a balance to it where we don't want to always be in, well, I just wasn't feeling it, so I'm not going to give that person another chance. I think one repetition is very informative. So if it's like if you meet someone in your initial meeting, you go, you know what, I felt really uncomfortable. That's a great practice that you just said, to go, was that something in me? Are they, because people can be black mirrors for us, where if someone is doing something that I don't tolerate in myself, like I'll think of an example. I have a friend that is very mindful. They're a very good listener. So they're very mindful not to interrupt. And so if they experience someone as talking over them or interrupting them, they're very put off. And I grew up in a family where people are talking over each other all the time. So I can be in the same room with someone who's doing that to me, and they'll be upset for me. Like, I cannot believe they did not let you finish your sentence. And I'll go, I didn't even mind. I always joke, I'm like a VHS tape. You can just press pause and then press play. Well, what was I saying? And I go right back. But what's interesting is they don't tolerate that in someone else because they won't tolerate it in themselves, because being heard is so important. So to them, it's like it's a value clash, and that's how they view it. So that's something to sit with, of like, okay, am I being intolerant of this because it's something that I won't allow for myself or for others to do? And so to always look at, is this operating from an insecurity or something that I won't allow myself to be, so I can't allow this other person to be? And I think that's where our partners, either best friends or romantic partners, are really great. If I meet someone that gets under my skin, I'll immediately go to James and say, James, it was really bothering me that this person was talking a lot. And I know I talk a lot. So do you feel like I am holding space for people when I share? Like, am I creating a break in the conversation? Like, is that why that person was brought into my life, was to show me this is what you do? And for me to have an experience of that so that I can go like, oh my goodness, I haven't asked Lori. I'm sorry, Lori, I've been talking a lot. Do you want to say it? Do you have anything to say about what I just said? And then I can reflect on maybe that person is annoying me in a way to show me something. Now, if I have a repetitive experience that feels like it's not really for any particular reason, like we had someone who was working on our house and I really didn't have a reason. It was just, this person makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to be in a room alone with them. I think there's something off about them. And one day, actually 2 times within 2 weeks, this person had a dead animal near them. Like, we were having a conversation outside and we looked down and they said, oh, look, a dead rattlesnake. I have never seen a dead rattlesnake in all of my time living in Arizona. I've never seen. It was a dead baby rattlesnake. And then they had a dead bird. But, well, look, I found a dead bird. And I was like, what is happening with that? Yeah. And because I'm clairvoyant, that to me was like, James said, do you think that was 2 visual cues telling you that person is carrying some sort of energy around, that you're uncomfortable around them? You don't have a reason to not be uncomfortable. And you've seen these 2 things. Maybe that's information. And then I start to go like, you know what? I'm just going to remove myself and see if I feel better. And then as I start to spend time away from them, I'm feeling better. And then I get close to them, I'm feeling worse. That repetition is information.
So I'm cracking up in my head while you're saying this, because I literally just went on a walk with Lindsay, who's actually sitting in the other room right now. And I was like, I had an experience where I had gone out to dinner and I was the whole table was getting cut off consistently by somebody. And I was so upset about it. And then I had chatted about it and I was like, okay, I'm just going to give it another chance because I actually really want to like this person.
Yeah.
And so ended up spending some more time with this person and it turned out to be amazing. Like I didn't notice it as much. It wasn't even happening as much. And the initial encounter, I would have said like, I'm done. Like if this was even me 5 years ago, I would have been like, nope. Nope, didn't feel good. This is my sign. I didn't like it. I thought it was really rude. And that would have been it, in all honesty. And there was a part of me that I wouldn't have paid attention to before, where it was like, no, there's a lot of value for you here with this person. Like you really enjoy certain things about this person. Yeah. You should go back. And I ended up going back and having a completely different experience twice in a row.
Yes. And that part of you that said, no, you should go back. Where did that happen?
I mean, I feel like it was just in my brain. I don't remember feeling anything in my body. I just thought of this person and like fond feelings actually.
Yes. Okay. So notice when I said, where did you feel that? You went, I don't know. So that release of air is a sentient, you went right into your body. You breathed out and then you were like, I don't know. It was kind of in my head. No, actually it was a feeling. And that's how people can recapitulate their intuition, is you go like, what part of me knew that? How did I receive that information? And what's so intriguing to me about teaching intuition, I see this over and over and over. I always tell people, whatever answer comes to you naturally, like you're very clairsentient, you start paying attention to that. And then as you trace that, you will probably find that there's also other information coming in. Like then you go, oh my gosh, now that I'm really paying attention to my body, I'm also realizing that I have an image in my head. And I also heard someone say their name 3 times. And then I thought maybe I should give them another chance, which could be a voice in your head of you. I told myself I should give them another chance. So I think that it's important to have a lot of experimentation with your intuition and to be like open to being wrong about something. There's a beautiful quote by Abraham Lincoln, which is, I do not like that man. I must get to know him better. And I read that as a child. And I remember that just stuck with me of like, that is, and you know, I don't know if you know the story about Abraham Lincoln, but he used to be someone that's very judgmental. And back in the day, he would write a little hate tweet and leave it on the ground for someone to find in his small town. And he would like write something very judgmental about someone and just leave the note on the ground for someone before we had Twitter. That's how they did it. And until one time he offended someone bad enough that it came to a duel, like an actual life or death situation because he's offended someone. And that was a turning point of, I've got to release this judgmental mind that I have. And maybe if I'm thinking something about someone else, it's because I don't know where they're coming from. Because removed from context, have you ever seen your best friend have a terrible episode? Like they're just like wildly emotional. And then you're there going, if you knew what she had been through, this would make complete sense.
Yeah, like and this is excused.
Yes. And you're like, nope, carte blanche. They're go ahead, let it out. And then someone else is looking at them like, what is wrong with this person? Yeah. So it's like the context can be really decisive. And I always think to myself when I struggle with someone that I'm like, man, I just do not click with them. I either look for if they have a significant other or a best friend. And then if I can't relate to that, of like, well, someone married this person, so there's got to be something amazing about them.
Tell me who likes you.
Or you just tune into like someone is their mom and dad, and they just think that they're just the brightest light, and so to relate to that part and give another chance. And I do think that a lot of times what we find intolerable in others is something actually that we don't want to see in ourselves, or that we've like ripped out of ourselves of like, no, I refuse to be that way. So I can't be with someone else doing that, you know?
Yeah. There was a part of me going back to the cutting off thing. I was like, there is a part of me after I examine this that is like, I want to be heard like that. I have so much that I want to say, but I hold back because I feel like it's rude. And this person just
Yes, and look at this person just being so
just
free.
Get
Don't
to be
they
free.
have that thought of, isn't this
free.
rude? How dare they?
Yes.
I am editing myself all day long, and here this person is, no filter whatsoever. Yeah, and
Totally.
so it becomes this like unfairness, and then it feels like an injustice.
Yeah.
And how can you create connection with someone that you feel like has wronged you in some way?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Okay, I have so many questions, but this one is coming up for me right now. I think a lot of people in this industry, like whether they're podcasters or coaches or people who do course in the digital space who get to teach and train, I feel like we say things like, oh, I got to download, or when I'm on stage, I just yes. start to channel. And truly, like, I want to know like what your take is on that, because you know how you're like, I have nothing to say on stage. I do that so much before I go on stage. And then once I get up there, I have so much to say.
Blows my mind every time. I'm like, thank goodness I have enough experience of this where you just, and actually if you talk to professional actors too, I remember Betty Davis had a quote that said, at some point you just pray to God and say the lines, you know, and it's just like you go out there and it's there.
Yeah. I say a prayer to God every single time. And I'm like, I trust that you're going to give me the words.
Yeah. I still call my mom and have her pray over me. Like, I do think that the more time you spend honoring and honing your intuitive guidance, in order to do that, there's a presupposition that you are buying into the belief that you're guided beyond your own physical self.
Totally.
That there's something that you can't see, you know, like the Wi-Fi of the universe, that's out there to guide you, protect you, inform you, support you. And it's letting go of this belief that we're every man for himself. We're all out there on our own. And when you tune into that, and when you honor that, and when you take that in as a fact of like, I know it feels like me, Lori, is walking out onto this stage all by myself, but I know in my heart and my mind and my spirit and my body that all my guidance is going with me. And then you're not alone out there. So you can start to tap into it. And then you've got this direct telephone line. And I think that practicing intuition on a daily basis, like I feel like I'm always in the intuitive. I'll make a logical decision, but then I'll go like, hold on, let me just tune in for a second. Yep, that feels right. So like check it against the logic. And then if I've got something that goes complete, it's like, wow, actually, I really want to go this way. I am getting an intuitive nudge to go that way. Let's see what's behind door number 1. And then I just allow myself to mess it up.
Yeah.
And that's informative. the more you practice that daily, all the time, the more it's like reaching out to a friend that is expecting a phone call from you versus like, okay, now I really need something, universe, and we have not talked in 3 years, but I need to hear from you now. And then it might take a little while, both not because the answer isn't immediately there, but because you haven't worked on being able to hear what you're receiving. And in that same sense of like, now I want to understand wine. If I haven't practiced being nuanced in my perception of my palate, then it might be harder to distinguish coming. I mean, I don't know, because I'm not a wine expert, but I would imagine if you don't even have a sip of wine for 10 years and then you go back and be like, yes, I used to be a sommelier and be so wonderful at that, you might be a little rusty, you know? And so it's a invitation to be in the constant conversation with that versus treating it as like a spot treatment of like, well, this is really important, so I should use my intuition for this, but I'm not going to use it in everyday situations.
Oh, okay. So I love the point that you made about having to believe in it. Like you focus on that belief, and even just opening up to that belief is going to open you up to like this. We were calling this before, like this truly is a superpower in life and in business. And a lot of people probably ask you, and they ask myself around like, how do you do that on stage? Or how do you just trust? Or how do you guys get up there? If people knew what what I felt like in my body, they would not believe I actually get on stage.
You know what's so funny, Lori, is that just at this last event, it was the first time that I was offering something as my own product, essentially.
Yeah, we know that's scary.
That wasn't, and it was it was a beta version of my intuition course that wasn't James doing it for me.
Right.
Now, he has done a pitch for me a lot of like, okay, guys, here's your new coach of the mastermind, and she's going to do this program this year. And don't you want to be in it? You want to be in it? There you go. Jen, come on up. And that was nerve-wracking because I'm like, oh my gosh, are people going to want to trust me as their teacher? And there's a whole different flavor to that. But like, I have never gotten the microphone and then said, hey guys, I'm doing this for the first time. This is what I'm offering. And backstage, I was shaking to the tune of like me and Jilly and Josh and one of my best friends who works for us, Jen, were backstage like laughing. Like, what is happening with my body right now? I was in a yoga squat trying to ground and not tremble. And then by the time I went out there, I had to take a breath and be like, hold on, I'm so nervous, I'm shaking, so that the energy would go out of my body. Because I tend to say if I say it, if
I acknowledge the elephant in the room,
then it kind of like goes away. It's like, don't even hide that from people. Just tell them I'm really nervous. Look at my hand shaking right now.
Yeah.
But that was such an interesting experience because I thought in my mind, I'm very excited and I'm clear that I want to do this, but my body is like having a total moment.
Yes. And that's where if you lean in, like you just even opening the door to believing in something bigger than you, God, universe, energy, whatever that is, that changed everything for me. It helped me stop being as nervous, and it's given me so much more like quality things to say on stage.
Yes.
Number one, I don't remember saying them because you are truly like, I really believe we channel if you believe that you will be, that you are accompanied by something greater than you when you go out there.
Yes.
And it's not going to feel normal to first believe that, even if you are the most faithful person to whatever you believe.
Totally.
Because the feelings in your body will overtake you. But if you go out with those feelings in your body, I do think that is one of the largest acts of faith that you can possibly do. And I promise you will be rewarded with the words or with a lesson that will change your life.
I totally understand that and agree with that 100%. I co-sign that. I think what came up for me when you said that was that what we were talking about how intuitive decision-making is kind of this organic living organism. And if you think about from the perspective of, if you're being invited to speak, what you're really being invited to do is be of service to whoever else is in that room. So Lori, you've got something that could really serve this room. And I want you to come and give that to them. So that is a focus on serving others. And then when we get into our anxiety and our fear and what was I going to say, like my script, that's more focused on self, because a lot of that is coming from, I want to make sure I sound good, that I sound intelligent, that I'm helpful. And even if you're scripting it out because you really want to be of service, I remember when I first started teaching yoga, I was so nervous that I was going to forget the sequence on the left side of the body once we did the right side of the body, that I would write out my entire class because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm dyslexic. There's a story that's going on in my head. I'm gonna do the right side, and then I'm gonna completely forget to do the left side, and then everyone's gonna hate it because they're gonna be unbuzzed. They're gonna be limping out. They're gonna injure themselves and never coming back. And my mentor said to me, Jenni, you're one of the most intuitive people I've ever met. I'm taking your notes. I want you to go in there and just intuitively do it. And I was like, but what if I forget? And she goes, what if you forget? What will you do if you forget? And I said, well, I guess I'll just say I forgot, and oops, we have to go back and do this pose. And she was like, and won't that be an endearing moment for the rest of the class?
Oh, I love that.
And so then I got to actually live my worst fear of like, and I forgot a pose, so we're going to go back. And she was exactly right. Everyone giggled and laughed and they went along with me. And then I had someone come up to me afterwards and say, I teach yoga and I put a lot of pressure on myself to remember everything. And the moment you laughed and said, I forgot a pose, we're going to go back and do it, that gave me such a gift. And I thought I should put less pressure on myself to make a mistake. And I went, if you only knew that I freaked out for months and would not allow myself to teach intuitively because I was afraid I would do that. And that was the moment that I was of the most service. So if you're focused too much on, I've got to do exactly what I have planned, you're focused more on yourself if we're being really real. But when you go like, I've prepared, I know I have something to share, and I'm going to go out there, I'm going to be with all these people. You don't know who's going to be in the room until they're in the room. And then when you allow yourself to do what you're doing, which is, I have prepared. I'm not saying don't prepare people. I'm a rehearser. Mm-hmm. So, but then you're just with them. That allows you to be in this energetic dialogue with them where you might find that you're saying things that didn't occur to you to say because you weren't in their energy field yet. How could you know that you needed to say that? And it might even be that Lindsay's in the room now, but what you don't know is that 2 hours ago, she was not coming. And then she decided, you know what? I don't know what it is. I got to be in that room to see Lori speak. And then as soon as her energy meets your energy, you get this tuning of, I know exactly what Lindsay needs to hear.
1,000,000%.
And that couldn't have been available to you earlier because she wasn't even going to be there. Mm-hmm. So you don't have enough data. That's what I mean by you don't have enough data to be in the intuitive conversation way, way, way in advance, which is why it's so important to leave this room for something intuitive to come through. If you're hugging too tightly to your script of, no, I said I was going to say this, I said I was going to do this, then you sometimes don't allow something organic to shift you. And that's what's going to be more of service in the space.
Oh, love that. So leaving room for the magic. That's what we always say.
Yes.
Like, whether that's with podcasting, like I have a bunch of questions that we did not ask on this note next to me. But in the grand scheme, we knew we were talking about intuition. And
I talked about so much stuff that I was like, I didn't know we were talking about that. That was
we
fun.
can talk about all these things. So last question for people, because you and I are in so many different rooms and worlds with people, and everyone has so many different beliefs. And I know, coming from a really religious background, it took me a while to let go and let it be okay to talk about even like psychic abilities, intuition, all of these things. So I know some people listening are really, they're grappling with it because they know that they have it, but they don't know if it goes against God or their beliefs. And they're really like, they're grappling.
Yes.
So can you explain to me, I know that I have made my own peace with it because I believe it's all related to God. Mm-hmm. But can you share with me a little bit about when people maybe come to you with this, like, I don't know how to feel. I feel nervous. I don't know if this is bad or wrong or what.
It's so cool intuitively because James and I had this conversation on the drive down. Mm-hmm. So first I would say for me, for my own practices, I am a bit pluralistic in my viewpoint of people's experience to God. One of my favorite professors in my global religions course in college, which I adored, said he likes to think of it like if you've ever seen the London Tube map in London with all the trains going in the underground.
Yeah.
So it's like you can take the red line to the blue line to the green line to the brown line and get over to Notting Hill, or you can just take the red line. And so you can take many different routes if you want, but if you want to say, I know that my pathway in life, my pathway to spirit, my pathway to God, whatever you want to call reaching towards your higher self is this one line, then be graceful with yourself and where you're at right now and do that. And if this doesn't fit, if this conversation doesn't fit into that mold right now, then that's also okay. Personally, I'm very like, I know what I've experienced. I know what's true for me. And I'm completely open and undefended by other people having different experiences. For me, the psychic conversation was such an easy one to digest because I have never had an experience of it being turned off. You know, when you grow up an identical twin, and my twin and I used to play mind games with each other where I'd say, I want you to think of something completely random that I could never, ever, ever guess. And when I'm able to go, you're thinking of a pink tiger inside of a green room standing on top of a blue ball. And she's like, what? You did that? You know, that's James used to run psychic tests on me way back when, where he'd go, I remember he called me one time and he's like, okay, he used to restore old motorbikes. And he's like, I'm looking at motorbikes. Tell me what color I'm looking at. And I was like, yellow and white. Oh my gosh. You know, and I went 6 for 6 and he hung up on me. And then he was like, he called me back and he was like, I'm sorry, that was just like straight up Harry Potter vibes. And I couldn't handle it.
I got real scared.
Yeah. So that's okay. Wherever you're at with it, be graceful with yourself. I think that I grew up in a Christian home. That's still where my beliefs lie. And there's a really wonderful book if anyone is in that space and they're wanting to open up further towards the metaphysical. There's a beautiful book. The foreword is written by Maya Angelou. It's written by a pastor who was Maya Angelou's pastor, and it's called Discover the Power Within You. And he cites a lot of references biblically that hint at there's a lot more going on than meets the eye energetically. And I think that in my experience, people who are coming from more of a Western traditional upbringing in the East, this is like pretty very common. Normal. Like we're talking about karma, past lives, energies, chakra systems, the in yoga, you know, the nadis in the body, anywhere bone touches bone, there's a spiral of light energy like that. In the East, that's like much more in the, like if you go to a Chinese medicine doctor, your meridians are going to be a conversation. It's not going to be in this 3D pharmaceutical, I'm going to prescribe you something. We're going to talk about, well, if you're experiencing this pain, then it may be connected to your kidney 1 point. Did you know that this meridian is connected to that? And so I think that people are just there's a whole array for you to find where this fits. And if you want to just start with the kernel of intuition, you could look at it as your own internal conscience and guidance. So even if we're not even talking about, I'm going to talk to archangels or dead relatives or past ancestors or talk directly to God, whether or not you have a concept of that or a belief in that, you could start with, I believe that I have my own internal guidance system, and that I want to learn how to turn in deeper to what my body is telling me is a yes or a no. That I would encourage people to just lean into clairsentience. There's an expression in neuroscience that the body is the subconscious mind. And just like when I said mentally, I'm not nervous, but my subconscious is nervous. And my body is telling me that some part of my brain is freaking out right now because the body doesn't lie. And so I think if you can't quite bring yourself to jump in the deep end of, you can talk to spirit guides and communicate with animals and see auric fields or have dreams about the future, then just start with, I want to learn to understand what my own body is telling me about me being on my path for my greatest good.
I love that so much. I do send messages to my Shiba Doodles, Bananas and Bonkers.
Yes. And do they get them?
I hope so. It's when we're gone. I tell them how I feel about them and that they're safe, all the things. So anyway, I am so grateful for you. This was so much fun. I feel like I looked at the clock and I'm like, oh, dang, we're good. All right.
I can talk to you all day.
We'll do a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have so many questions. So thank you so much. Where can we get more of your work?
Well, so you can tune in at the Mind Your Business podcast. I am James's co-host. And we actually, if this conversation really interested you, the episode 577 is the episode he and I did together on unlocking your intuitive superpowers. And we love having that discussion because while I was born with it, as we say, James was the opposite. He is a logician. He has a logical mind and he's very almost mathematical and masculine in his approach, but he's so curious. And we met when we were 20, and I've been on this 20-year journey with him. You know him now. He's incredibly
James if we didn't say his last name,
James
everyone
Wedmore, incredibly intuitive, and now everyone knows him of like, oh yeah, he wears crystal bracelets and he makes intuitive decisions, and he's always saying like, I got an intuitive hit but that was not how he was when he was 20. And so he is living proof that you can hone it, you can develop it. If it's something you desire, there's steps that you can take to unlock it. And so that's a really good episode to start with.
I love that part of him. And I love that you two together, that is so much fun now, like learning about all this. So she held back on some bonus content, and she is going to share in the bonus content how to get better sleep and the fastest way to tap into your intuitive dreaming, which I need to learn all about.
Yes.
So if you guys want the bonus content, all you have to do is go down to the show notes and click on the bonus content, and we're going to send that to your inbox. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. You guys go find her, follow her, listen to the podcast, because I love the podcast, especially if you were into this, you're going to like dive into the vortex with them. So until next time, everyone, earn your happy. Bye-bye.